refrigerants. Refrigerant charge is an important risk factor, and any scale should provide the appropriate accuracy to ensure installed charges are correct. Dial charge cylinders with sight glass in the cylinder should not be used to charge systems with flammable refrigerant. Now, these samples I have are kind of an oversimplified version of what was previously presented. But in just general terms, when installing a test unit in your test facility, you need to use the smallest room of the test facility. Typically, the indoor rooms are smaller in size than the outdoor rooms of a test facility. So for this example here, I have using propane as a refrigerant, and our particular facility, number 3, the internal volume of the indoor room is 62.3 meters cubed, and the practical limit for propane is the 0.008 kilograms. Oh, thank you, yes. So you multiply the volume by the practical limit, and you come up with the amount of charge in pounds that is the limit for that particular facility. As you can see, that's very small amount of charge for propane, and so this facility is definitely going to need to have detection and ventilation installed in it. Okay, now the same calculation for R32, using the same room, same facility for purposes of showing the difference. The practical limit for R32 is 0.061 kilograms per meter squared. And so multiplying the volume here, you can use up to 3.8 kilograms in that room. And as could be predicted, a much larger unit can be tested in this room. But we recommend installing detection and ventilation systems in all of your rooms that are going to be used for testing new refrigerants and flammable refrigerants. In closing, I'd like to just say that we, of course, strongly encourage all manufacturers, countries, organizations, and associations to continue the discussions that have been happening at these symposiums at this topic, and sharing best practices of testing products with these new refrigerants as they develop. Thank you very much. I'll take a seat. Okay, sure.
I would like to thank all of our speakers. I would like to invite Dennis and else on the stage. We are running out of time, so it's going to be very quick questions and answers session here. We'd like to open the floor for questions. Just a few questions if you have any. Do we have a microphone over there? No, over there. Bottom, yeah.
Samir from Petra. I have a question to Mr. Byron regarding the testing facility in the U.S. As you mentioned in your presentation, the maximum allowable refrigerant charge for the room you have is 0.008 kilogram per cubic meter. So, is this for one circuit or multi-circuit? I mean, if we have a unit of multi-circuits, 3, 4, 5 circuits, and each have a less refrigerant charge than this number, is it applicable to test this in your facility, or it's the whole refrigerant facilities for all circuits? Thank you.
Yeah, please answer the question right now, because we're going to forget.
Yes. Okay.
Hello?
Zen? Okay, thank you. Now, was your question, if the unit has multiple indoor sides, what would you do? Was that the question? Did I understand? Okay. What you need to look at is the total charge. The total charge of the product that could leak into that particular room. We do have facilities that have multiple indoor rooms for testing products that have many indoor side units, that we can test up to, I think, 12 different indoor side units in 3 different rooms. But as a added safety factor, what we will be doing is using the total charge of the product. Even though it's highly, highly unlikely all that charge is going to end up in the same room, it's just an additional factor of safety.
Bassam?
Bassam Lasad. The questions to Els and Dennis are ASHRAE 15 and 5149 complementary, conflicting, or they are overlapping? Very quickly.
Use the other one.
Well, certainly Els can chime in with her comment. I would say they are similar, not identical, and just different for very good reason. Okay, they're based on somewhat different philosophies, and again, ASHRAE 15, by its nature, drives for code enforcement language, simple, highly enforceable. It's written into law in each one of the states, and so almost by necessity, it's different. But as you review the two, even though I'm speculating because 15 isn't done, I don't think you'll find glaring differences, but you will find differences.
Okay, you want to add to it? No, you're fine. One more question, last question? No more questions. Well, thank you very much. I guess, are we ready for the award?
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Mr. Ayman already told me no comments, but I'll take 2 minutes. My name is Lee Ju, and I'm with the ASHRAE Falcon chapter. I would like to thank all the speakers who have shared their valuable information with us. Thank you very much for sharing those information, and I think the whole seminar and the symposium has been good. We are at an age where energy demand is growing at a crazy pace. And in this part of the world, we use 60 to 70% of the building energy to meet the HVAC demand. I think it's high time we find something which is very radical, which is highly efficient and safe, because it's high time we do it. Just to give you an example, in electrical, in lighting, they did it. Think about the incandescent bulbs. Something which was using 100 watts, today an LED bulb is using 10 watts or less. If electrical engineers can do it, why can't we do it? I think we haven't tickled enough of our brain cells. We need to think deep, we need to tickle our brain cells a little bit more and find something which will help us to sustain the world which we live in. With this note, thoughts are very primary, and what we have organized here is a common platform for people to exchange ideas, and I think we will think together and find an answer very soon. I would like to invite Mr. Stephen Urick to do the honors. Please, Ms. Albert. Mr. Dennis Doman. Thank you. Mr. Byron Horek. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much. I think it's been an interesting session, like the rest of the sessions since yesterday. So since we are running out of time, I think we'll have to squeeze this session a little bit. Instead of 1 hour, we'll try to do it in 30 minutes. And Mr. Abdullah is saying to me, maybe 15. In any case, we'd like to call the panelists to join us here on the stage, starting by Mr. Abdullah Al-Muaini, the Acting Director of Emirates Authority for Standardization and Metrology, ESMA, Engineer Udaiba Al-Qaidi, the Head of Chemicals Department at the Ministry of Environment and Water of United Arab Emirates, Dr. Ahmed Alauddin, the Regional Vice Chair for Government Affairs and Ashri Falcon Chapter, Mr. Stephen Sicars, the Director of Montreal Protocol Branch at UNIDO, and Dr. Shamila Nair, the Head of Ozone Action Program at UNEP. The moderator for this session is a well-known expert to you all. I don't think I need to introduce him. I'll just call for his name. It's Professor Reddy Agarwal. Please, Professor, you will help us in this moderation of the session. One last comment. I would like to tell you that the presentation for all the 2 days will be posted on the website of the event starting from next week after being converted, and get the consent of the presenters for posting them on a public domain. And rest assured that we have captured all what you have mentioned. I forgot to refer to Ms. Lama Maghramis from Lebanon, who is kindly helping us in taking notes of the whole sessions. So all your recommendations and valuable comments will be captured and will be circulated to you if you still have any additional comments. Professor, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Friends, we have reached to the concluding session, and really it's my pleasure to moderate this session. And first of all, I'll like to thank the organizers for inviting me for such an important event, and it has been gone very well, very successful, and I was attended the last symposium, and there is a lot of difference which has made by the various investigating agencies, researchers, industry, and all over the globe. I just wish to make one simple observation. At present, there are two sets of countries. One set, those countries which have already phased out use of HCFCs, long back, like EU and similar other developed countries. If I go back, way back in 2004, and there are no immediate concerns to these countries for looking for the alternatives to HCFCs, but definitely they are looking much ahead, for the HFCs. While there is another set of countries which have just initiated the phase out of HCFCs, and HCFC phase out is a priority in these countries. That is one observation which in last 2 days I captured in my sitting over here. To me, it appears like a generation gap, though it's a very small, but it looks, it's a generation gap. And sometimes between these two sets, it is similar to sometime the older generation is not able to appreciate the challenges faced by the younger generation in the society. Is there just a similarity in that, or vice versa? So this is what is happening, but definitely this workshop has gained very light opening, and this session is specifically devoted to the policy and technical measures for consideration of industry and governments. And we have very eminent, the panelists here, and they are, known to all our audience. And I would request to the panelists, because of the shortage of, time as we are reaching to the closer of this wonderful event, take 2 to 3 minutes. If you can limit your, be precise in your, intervention. I look forward from this, and may I invite with this Mr. Abdullah Al-Moini to take up the floor first. Please.
Okay. All good, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for all of you being with us in these 2 days. And thank you for our co-organizer of this event. Just to conclude, ISMA point of view in this field, we have been talking about refrigerant and alternative refrigerant for past 3 years and this year also. So we are almost 4 years talking about the same subject and looking forward to have a solution or better alternative for refrigerant. As a ESMA point of view or UAE government also, actually this topic is, I think it's got already it's enough time for discussion in terms of which alternative it is suitable for this region and high ambient temperature region. And I think we came to the point where we have to decide which one is there, since we are running out of the time and we have to phase out some type of products or substances from our market or our usage. This is one of the things we have to finalize, I think, as soon as possible. And I've been hearing maybe yesterday some of questions when UAE or GCC will decide to phase out R22, and I've been asked so many questions, similar question, past 3 years and this year during the breaks and in between. I think it is the decision should be now coming from. Again, I will say it since I said it last year also, the decision from the industry. And I think we will have to take this kind of conference forward, and we want to achieve to the point that this region should be, and UAE also, a center of research on this kind of subjects, energy efficiency, alternative refrigerant. We don't want to limit our discussion on which refrigerant is best for UAE or which alternative is okay when we are going to implement, when we are going to phase out. I think we have to find and we have to conclude our discussions and take it further to the research. We have to be a technology-based area for high ambient temperature. Deciding which kind of refrigerant, I think it should be easier now after 4 years of discussion. Which kind of refrigerant? Again, we are asking the same questions every year, but I think out of this session or today's sessions, we have to finalize what we have to do in next 2 years for this kind of things, and take our subjects in upcoming years for this kind of events to a research and develop new technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdullah Al-Mani. May I now invite Engineer Otaba Al-Qaidi. Please, floor is yours.
First of all, let me thank my colleagues from ISMA, UNEP, ASHRI, AHRI, and UNIDO for organizing this symposium. Also, a special thanks to the sponsor for this event, and a special thanks to representatives from international association, research, institutes, and industry for sharing with us their expertise in this field. After going through all research, I think that the high ambient region is facing a challenge in finding a suitable alternative in refrigerants cooling sector. So we need to work together to conduct studies and research for the national and regional level in finding better and efficient alternatives for the high ambience country, taking into account the health and safety measures in these alternatives. Also, we need to emphasize the cooperation between regional and global research centers in this field. We should encourage the national and global environmentally friendly applications that are being used currently and proved to be efficient in protecting the environment and the ozone layer to reduce the dependence on ODS and the green gases also. That's all from our side, and thank you all.
Thank you very much for your brief and very precise observation. May I now invite Dr. Ahmed Ala Alidin for his comments, observations.
Thank you. Over the last couple of days, we have outcome, and also from the previous symposiums, it's quite obvious that the concern of upgrading the skills and knowledge of the servicing sectors to ensure the best practices that lead to emission reduction and increase system efficiency. The training programs and certificate systems emphasized by many of the speakers on the last 2 days demonstrate the urgent need doing so. It's an urgency matter. ASHRI, as an international society and covering around 130 countries by their chapters, we have worked continuously to offer products and services to achieve these goals. From the field of experience of ASHRI, I think the issue of professional ethics seems to be a key missing elements when we are designing education and training programs for both engineers and technicians. The incorporation of professional ethics in governmental, academic, vocational, and industry training and educational programs would lead to a significant change in the practices by the individuals and the industry. Even with limited resources and tools, a technician can perform good job and minimize emission if the social environment responsibility is well built in this knowledge and background. Accordingly, I think the element of professional ethics should be better integrated, not only as a course, it should be, or a lectures, it should be a training, educational program, it should be continued in all academic and governmental bodies. This is my notes and my comments, and thank you.
Thank you very much. I have the pleasure to invite Mr. Steve Urek. Please.
Thank you very much. It's been a lot of discussion over the last 2 days, and actually over the last 3 years. And I think the same question remains, what do we do? And I think the first thing we need to do is take a step back. And we need to look at the graph that Mr. Arnaud showed yesterday on the different uses of refrigerants in the different sectors. And I think asking the question is, what is the next replacement for R22 is not, there isn't one replacement. I think that's the thing that we've seen over the last 3 years. And I think you need to take it sector by sector. And you do have time. There are certain easy questions and transitions that can be made today. You have the smaller charge systems on domestic refrigeration, window air conditioners, where we know that moving to a hydrocarbon is very easy and simple and has been used a lot of places around the world. The more difficult part, and the big part of the graph that was shown yesterday by Mr. Arnaud, is in the stationary air conditioning. And we don't know what those answers are yet. But you have time to come up with those answers because we're still looking at what those results are. And it's not just the refrigerant, but it's the energy use of those refrigerants that you need to do. So I think it's really kind of planning and telling your customers, using the technology that's available today for those types of applications that are appropriate. R22 410A, 134, but working towards a new solution that we know is going to be lower GWP in the future. But that is going to be 10 to 15 years out for some of those applications. Some might be a year or two as we develop the infrastructure and the training that's necessary. But other ones are going to be a little bit longer term. And I guess not worrying about making a decision for all areas today, because you're not going to be able to do it, but take it in small steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Urek. May I invite now Stephen Sickards, please.
Thank you very much. Before actually making my concluding comments, I would like to thank a number of institutions and people. I would like to thank in particular for the hospitality of the government of the United Arab Emirates, in particular the authority, ESMA, and the ministry, and His Excellency Dr. Rashid Ahmed bin Fahad, the partners UNEP, AHR and ASHRAE, and the supporters IIR, GIZ, EPEE, JRAIA, and CHEAA, and of course the industry experts and the local organizing team. I think they did an absolutely outstanding job to put together and carry through a complex and interesting conference, and thank you very much for that. Now, I was trying to find out what we actually have heard and what is the story that we have heard over 2 days. And I think the story started with hearing from a number of experts from industrialized countries, from the EU, from Japan, from the United States, about their steps to move out of HFCs into a new era where less HFCs are being used, different alternatives, more leak tight. While this is not relevant yet directly for the region here, because you're in the HCFC era, nevertheless, it says a lot about the future of the substances which are available to you in the long term as a substitute. And I think that was what I was hearing. I was hearing that some of the substances which are available or which seem to be available as a substitute for 22 are in a large part of the globe already on their way out. And that is just a fact of life. They are not on their way out completely. There will be leftovers, but by and large, they are substances which have gone through most of their lifespan and they're in decline. I think that was the message we heard from the gentlemen and ladies from the EU, US, and Japan, gentlemen actually only. Secondly, it was very noticeable that a big issue was about safety. The non-HFC refrigerants, and actually one of the HFCs with lower climate impact, all of them seem to be flammable, which is logical given the fact that we expect them to have a short lifetime in the atmosphere and therefore being somewhat unstable. So flammability is not a complete surprise. Flammability seems to run down into perceptual issues. Despite the fact that refrigeration products are inherently dangerous, not dangerous like extremely dangerous, but I once heard a statistic, don't ask me, when it was about refrigerator conversion to hydrocarbons, that the main cause of injury is that refrigerators fall on people when they open the door, inherently dangerous. Being zapped by electricity, inherently dangerous. Here we enter an era where a new danger is put, an additional risk, and we need to learn how to handle it. It's not that we start from zero. We don't have a risk-free product. There is no such thing. But we have to learn to deal with a different mix. In the course of that, safety standards were presented in the symposium, and I find it in the end encouraging that they are being developed and that they are very far in their development, and that now the next problem is to actually apply them, which leads to the problem, and that is actually, let's say, to the challenge of training. And I think there were debates and there was a very clear call for having, in particular, trained service technicians. And that brings me to the question of timeline, which came especially today up a number of times. And the way it sounded in some of the questions and answers I heard today was as if there is a certain point in time in which the technology could be switched on and then would be there. But in particular, if you talk about the preparation time, giving training to technicians, figuring out how to put the infrastructure in place, this is time consuming. We talk about a number of years that we will have to prepare the standards, which we largely have, the training programs, teaching the trainers, getting the programs out, vocational training centers. Everyone needs to be addressed, a lot of stakeholders. And I think in the moment that we recognize that the likeliness is extremely high that in the future a lot of our refrigerants are flammable and will have safety issues, might be toxic. In that moment, it is time to actually address the issue of training and to start preparing the technicians for the time when they have to handle this. And these were essentially the things that I took home from this workshop. Of course, everyone might have different impressions, but these were mine, and I hope that this is, that you could take home as much as I could from these 2 days. Thank you very much again for having the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
So may I invite now Dr. Shamila to give her views.
Thank you, Professor Agarwal. His Excellency, Mr. Al-Moini, ladies and gentlemen, as the last speaker of this session, I think I can be a little bit more daring and bold. I understood that this session is around what's next. What is the role of each party? That means industry, governments, associations, societies, and of course the UN agencies. What's next? What are your individual roles and the take-home message from the last 2 days? Since I'm from the United Nations Environment Programme, I'll start with us. What can we offer? How can we assist?